about to begin our session, our next panel discussion on compensation strategies, where we'll explore what we can learn from mechanisms to remunerate journalistic content on tech platforms. And our speakers for the session are Paula, Fray, Indri, Saptaningrum, Marina Pita, and Nelson Yap, who will be joining us virtually. For that, I would like to invite Mbak Evi Mariani from Project Multatuli to further introduce our speakers and lead the discussion. The stage is yours, Mbak Evi.
Hello, everyone. So, hi, morning. Okay. Let the song stop. So we will have 3 speakers because Marina unfortunately cannot come. So welcome everyone. I will introduce the session and then also the speakers. Okay. So yeah. So the panel is compensation strategies. How to get money from the big tech platforms. This is something I've talked with the speakers. They're all commiserate. They're all not, but they're optimistic. But I think they face a very deep challenge. Yeah. So today we will learn from Nelson Yap. Nelson Yap is editorial director, head of clients and partners. Sorry, wrong bio. So Nelson Yap is co-chair of the Public Interest Publishers Alliance, which secure collective bargaining outcomes for 24 independent publishers with Google. He is also a journalist of over 22 years. So from Nelson, we will learn about how Australia tried to get compensation from big tech platforms. And the second speaker will be, I'll ask Paula Fray to get to the stage, please. Paula. Paula serves as a panel member on South Africa's Competition Commission Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry. She is the first woman editor of a major newspaper. She brings decades of media expertise to shaping an equitable media landscape. Hello, Paula. Welcome. And the third speaker today in this panel will be Mbak Indri Aswati Diah Saptaningrum. She is the vice chair of the Committee on Digital Platform Responsibility and a lecturer in technology law at Atmajaya Catholic University with over 15 years of experience in human rights, digital regulation, and platform accountability. Welcome, Mbak Indri. So we will learn from Australia, South Africa, and Indonesia. So Nelson will be online. Should appear on the screen. Hello, Nelson. Hi. How are you? It's already noon, I think, there in Australia. So yeah, let's present your presentation, I think. Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
First cab off the rank. I was hoping I wouldn't be the first, but it's okay.
So Nelson, you have 15.
I get nervous.
You have 15 minutes, and the people, the staff, told me that I have to be strict. So I'm sorry, I will be strict. Yeah. So
yeah.
You have 15 minutes to present. Yeah. Please help Nelson to present the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say quickly thank you to AMC, IFPIM, AJI for putting together this program. I think it's very important for the global South and ASEAN to continue to collaborate, particularly on this important issue, which is looking for compensation and securing compensation, well, not just from the big tech company, hopefully our government as well. And hopefully I can share some updates on what's happening in Australia. So yes, just the next slide, please. So yeah, I'll be sharing an update on Australia and also talking about what's happening in Australia following the US election, which I think many of you would probably be experiencing as well. Next slide, please. So just very quickly to the News Media Assistance Program in Australia, just an update from publishers. So over the last 3 years, our publishers in Australia have become a lot more organised since the News Media Bargaining Code was announced. And we've increased our lobbying, and that has been very successful with the government. The government has introduced this new program called the News Media Assistance Program. We call it NewsMap, which aims to provide public funding to support public interest journalism and media diversity in Australia. And so it's, looking at, we've borrowed from similar models that you've seen in Europe, where governments fund public interest journalism. And you've seen on the slide here, $99 million committed over 3 years for the news sector. The government is also committing to spending advertising for government-related campaigns for regional newspapers. We hope that will be expanded into other newspapers, not just regional. There's also a $15 million allocation for the regional, independent, suburban, multicultural and First Nation publishers who publish only online, so not print, and also a $10 million to our communications authority to implement the media diversity measurement framework. So the government will create an advisory panel, which will consist of independent experts who will assess and distribute the funding to news organizations that need it the most. So this is a very major boost, and I hope that this kind of program can be rolled out to other countries around the world. I think it's important that we as media, the media industry, make the point that we are an important public infrastructure, and I think in Australia at least the government is recognizing that. Yes, next slide, please. So in terms of the next one, we're just discussing the news media I just have to update my slide too. The news media bargaining incentive, or as you all know, Australia 3 years ago introduced the News Media Bargaining Code. It has had successes, but not entirely perfect. As we've discovered, Facebook or Meta has cancelled all the deals. So there were limitations because the two tech giants are not designated under the code. So, and we've seen deals that have not been renewed. So what the government did was in December last year, announced the News Media Bargaining Incentive, the NBI, which seeks to address the shortcomings of the News Media Bargaining Code. So under the original code, Meta avoided its obligation by removing news from platform like it's done in Canada, where there's no news on Instagram or Facebook, and that has avoided it paying publishers compensation. So the NBI seeks to address that shortcoming by making sure that this applies to any platform, digital platform in Australia or search engine that carries news, regardless of whether they block the news or not, they still have to pay compensation. So this also means that the code doesn't need to designate the tech giants in order for it to hopefully introduce get the parties to negotiate. And also we avoid having to update the code to include a must carry provision for Meta and Google to carry news on their platform. So next slide, please. So the NBI charge is basically an incentive that the Australian government is proposing, which will be levied, or I should say charged onto the tech platforms. We're still waiting on the consultation to begin, but from what we understand, it will be a percentage of the tech platform's revenue in Australia. We don't know what the percentage will be yet, but it will only apply to digital platforms with gross annual revenue of over $250 million in Australia. So that would apply to Google, Meta, and TikTok, but Twitter or X is not included because their revenue is not over $250 million in Australia. So the MBI charge is basically an incentive to get the digital platforms to sit down at the negotiating table and enter into agreements or renew existing agreements with news publishers in Australia rather than cancel them. And I don't know what the government's threshold will be in terms of, what they believe news, the digital platforms, how many agreements the digital platforms will have to do to meet some sort of standard. But if they don't, if the government feels that they haven't acted in good faith, then the government will charge them the MBI charge, which we don't know what it is yet, but which is, a positive. We think hopefully, that kind of discussion will make it so that the tech giants do come and, negotiate. But critically though, the MBI doesn't address the threat of AI, like ChatGPT and Google Gemini, and all the other things that are arising. So we're still falling behind in terms of regulating compensation or copyright payments to publishers. So we're still lobbying the government on that, and hopefully we can get some progress soon. Next slide, please. So obviously, no doubt we've all seen and heard the news. We've been watching it since November last year, the US election result. So the US election has had quite a big impact on the news media bargaining code in Australia. I'm sure you can all see on the right-hand side all the headlines that I've copied for you. The big tech platforms are lobbying very hard in Washington to have the US government put pressure on countries like Australia to basically get rid of the news media bargaining code under the language that, it's plundering the tech platform, which, to be honest, the tech platforms are plundering our local news. So it's quite funny that they're using this kind of language. But so this pressure is, as you've seen already in Canada, the digital service tax, which is obviously slightly different to this, has been killed off by the Canadian government. And you've also seen there are Google ditches $1 million deals with publishers. And Google reneges deals. So in Australia, the PIPA publishers, where I'm a co-chair of, we've had our contracts to be put politely terminated 2 years before they were due to be renewed. So for us, this goes to show that the US election is, I think, emboldened big tech to maybe take a different approach, maybe not take a good faith approach to negotiating. Maybe they think they have someone or a administration in the White House that could be, more leaning towards using tariffs to exert pressure on countries not to introduce laws to, make sure big tech compensates. And no doubt the AI companies will be learning from this as the fight for us to get compensation goes on. So in conclusion, I think, we must continue to collaborate on this space, which is, again, why we're here in this conference. I think time and time again, it's been shown that if we allow big tech to dictate the terms, they don't often act in good faith. And I think other countries can learn what is happening in Australia already. I'm sure you all will be experiencing this, which is tariffs. US tariffs are being used to put pressure on countries to get rid of the news media bargaining code or similar mechanisms. And of course, the threat of AI as well. As we know, they continue to scrape our data, and we haven't seen a single dollar of compensation from them. And, they need our data to be accurate, but they don't want to pay. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. They need to compensate us. So yes, I will keep that very brief so we can have more time for discussion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nelson. Actually, you still have actually 8 minutes, but let's save it for
the
Q&A session. Thank you so much, Nelson, for a very packed presentation. Next, Paula, you also have 15 minutes maximum. Can be less if you want.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm the media expert on the South African Commission's inquiry, and we have a full technical team that works with us, and I'm going to share with you some of the detail. I have quite a detailed presentation, but I'm not going to go through it. I've made it detailed so that if you're interested, you could actually have a look at it. If you are working on regulation, can I really recommend that you read our report and our appendixes? We have a 120-page report and 8 appendixes. So I'm really going to try and distill over 1,000 pages of work, solid information, I think, on the kinds of things that we can be looking at. I want to say that there are a couple of things. We were fortunate because our inquiry came after Australia, after Canada, and so we could learn some of the lessons there. When you're looking at our inquiry, it really was to look at the impact of the platforms on social media and search, but also on AI and chatbots. And then, of course, we did quite a lot of work on the ad tech, because that's where a lot of the monetization really comes through for media. And our inquiry is really situated within the South Africa's constitution, really in terms of the role that media plays in upholding our constitution and the constitutional right to freedom of expression. And I think that's really important when you look at some of our proposed remedies. We worked, one of the things that came out really clearly is that digital platforms don't create content, but they profit from the content that is created. And therefore harm media sustainability because we're creating the content and supporting the ecosystem. And that the Constitution of South Africa really requires a strong independent media if we are to promote the Bill of Rights. What also differed with South Africa is that we included the public broadcaster into our inquiry, and that was fundamentally different because everyone else has been looking at commercial media. South Africa has really high inequality. Our Gini coefficient is one of the highest in the world, and when you look at the media landscape, we have the plurality of media is quite rich in the sense that we have a lot of community media, a media in the vernacular, and then we have a concentration actually of commercial media with 4 major media houses. And so when we're looking at this inquiry, one of the things that we wanted to look at was something that looked at the impact of all media, not just media, commercial media. And I think that's really important. Let me just see if I can move this. Oh, sorry. Just trying to move that. Then, okay. Let's see if we can move this and then. Yeah. There we go. For a minute. Okay, we just need to go. It keeps on going back. I'm going to just speak to it. It's fine. When we look at our media landscape, I mean, it's quite important that you consider that those are the things that we were aware of. I want to say that we had a rigorous process. So we had calls for information, we had public hearings, we had confidential closed meetings where the platforms were able to actually give us their side, give us information. We had additional calls for information, and we have now issued a provisional report. As part of the process, people are commenting on that provisional report before we actually release the final report. And why is this important? Because I think that at the end of the process, we have something that will be implemented that is binding, but at the same time, you don't want unintended consequences. I want to say that when we started the public hearings the week before, one of the oldest newspapers in South Africa closed, the print version closed down. And during the hearing, it's quite clear that South African media is in a precarious state. And even now, with the provisional report, we have a really influential media that has issued Section 189 letters to all its staff because of the financial situation that they are in, and that's retrenchment letters. Our newsrooms are shrinking post-COVID. The South African, I mean, overall, the role of the Commission is something that we highly, highly aware of. what did we find? We found that news content is important for search engines, and this is a huge debate I think all of us are facing. What is the value of news? Is it the article that is next to an ad? Is that where we see the value of news? Or is the value of news what it contributes to the ecosystem, right? Is the value of news the fact that when you go to search for something, there are a whole lot of options of information that you can draw on, and so you go to that search engine because you get a lot of different options. Is the value of news the fact that we clean up the misinformation and disinformation, that we carry the cost actually of misinformation and disinformation? When stories go viral that are not truthful, it is the media that actually cleans up that. But the platforms don't pay for the journalists, they don't pay for the fact-checking necessarily. And I'm aware that Meta supports fact-checking, but it's the day-to-day journalism that we fix with misinformation. We found, for example, and you can go forward a few slides if you wanted to catch up. We found, for example, that the media says that the value that they add to news is the fact that they refer people to our news stories. What the Commission found is that in 2023, for example, referring traffic benefit to news websites was about 200 million rand, but that in the same year, Google's estimated benefit from news content was between 8 and 900 rand, and so there was a short 900 million rand. So there's an estimated imbalance of value of about 300 million. The role of social media, so the majority of South Africans get their news actually from the public broadcaster and from social media. And so one of the things that we really found is that social media is important for people to get news. And this really was a lesson. This is the importance that Meta has. In South Africa, Facebook is 0 rated. And in fact, in many African countries, Facebook is 0 rated. And I think it's the same in Southeast Asian countries, which means that Facebook is the internet. Facebook is where people get their news and information. If the Commission, for example, was to impose that Facebook pay for all the news on their pages, we would lose a critical platform. When the Association of Independent Publishers came to present on behalf of their members, and they have small community media that publish in the vernacular, more members had Facebook pages than websites. And you could say, oh, but we can give them, we can help them get onto a website. But the reality is they use Facebook because their audiences are on Facebook, and their audiences are able to access Facebook in order to get news and information. And so money is important, but there are also other things that we need to be looking at if we want to level the playing field. You know, when we started the inquiry, when we launched the inquiry in September 2023, AI was on the agenda. By the time we released our provisional report this year, AI is the agenda. And so it's a huge shift. And in many ways, the inquiry itself cannot even anticipate where AI will go. And we found, for example, that South African media is being used, albeit quite small, for AI training, but it's not been compensation. Yesterday, we spoke about the fact that there are no brown people who have signed those agreements, right? In South Africa, there is no media house that is signed, or as far as we are aware of, that is negotiating an AI agreement with any of the major platforms. And I think the same is true for the rest of Africa. I don't think that there are any agreements being negotiated. But at the same time, we know that this is the future, and so we need to anticipate that at some point, that's where we're going to be. If we could move on to the remedial action slide, and I'll just talk very quickly about our remedial action. So first of all, what are the proposed remedies that we have looked at? I mean, when we looked at the fact that Meta blocked news, that Google payments quite often favored the big mainstream media, The inquiry really wanted to look at a sustainable win-win process. But it has put forward, and I think we all know that these are difficult now to push, but we have put forward that if we were unable to actually find a solution, that the Commission could impose a 5 to 10% digital levy on media, social media, search, and AI companies if no agreement has been reached. So first of all, for search, the remedy is proposed to restore the referral traffic, that Google actually adjust search algorithms to support South African news media. We found, for example, that if you searched in South Africa, you were quite likely, and in one example we had a story that was published in India quoting the Chinese news agency that was quoting a South African news story came up in the search for a South African story, right? And so the idea is that to stop favoring international algorithms and favor South African media in search, to share more data with South African media. This has come up repeatedly where media say that they cannot monetize because they don't get enough data in terms of understanding their audiences. And so they wanted more data shared. Where the commissioners also proposed that South African media are able to opt out of AI summaries without losing their search visibility. Because at the moment, if you opt out of AI, you tend then to also be opted out of search. And so we're saying people should be able to opt out of being scraped without being then diminished in terms of search. And then we wanted media to be able to negotiate agreements with platforms. We have made an exception, or the remedies do make an exception for AI, for the media to be able to negotiate collectively for AI. The remedy also is for compensation, for Google to pay between 300 and 500 per year over 3 to 5 years to address the lost revenue and benefiting diverse media. And so for this, it's to get away from major media benefiting only, and to make sure that there is a fund that also supports community media and other media. For social media, the issue is that Meta and X should restore South African news visibility. So the idea of when you're pushing a link that you then lose out needs to be overcome. And so the idea is that Meta should restore the news visibility, but also expand. And for YouTube, this is important because our public broadcaster, for example, uses YouTube extensively and yet cannot sustain income that can actually overcome its shortfall in its budget. So to increase revenue sharing on YouTube and on the Meta platforms. But the platforms also need to be held accountable, and this in the provisional report has elicited a lot of response and feedback. The platforms should be held accountable in the fight against misinformation, and so that they should fund fact-checking and continue to fund fact-checking. Meta does, but with the American election, it stopped funding fact-checking in America, and so we need to make sure that, in fact, that doesn't happen outside of America. And then again, to share data, to fund oversight, and to promote digital literacy. In terms of Gen AI, the remedy is to allow media to collectively negotiate AI deals, for AI companies to enable media to opt out of the summaries without losing search visibility, and to ensure that AI chatbots don't favor global media partners over South African media in terms of referral traffic. I want to say that that one of the things that the Commission did that also differs is to say that media sustainability is a collective responsibility, and that if we're serious about it, then government and business also needs to come to the party. And so in our remedies, we really included proposed measures such as tax breaks and committed ad spending to sustain independent media. We spoke about community media exemption for collective bargaining, that they actually collectively could sell ads in order to boost their revenue. And then we proposed an industry fund with a donation-based fund to support media organizations. And that includes not just the media houses, but the oversight bodies. So, for example, our press council, that when we're talking about compensation strategies, we also make sure that the oversight bodies are compensated and supported, because they used to be supported by media, but as revenues declined, a lot of them have stopped paying their membership fees and stopped supporting them. So we really wanted to make sure that there was that even the oversight bodies like the Press Council of South Africa and the Broadcasting Complaints Commission were included in the compensation. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Next, Indri, we also have 15 minutes. Yeah.
Perhaps I can do shorter than that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thanks for the conference to invite us as a newly additions committee that tackling around the asymmetric, relation between media and digital platform. It's an honor for us to actually learn from other experience. So listening to the previous two speaker, for me, I see my colleague around the table as well. We see that we have a lot more to do as a homework for the committee to be able to officially and effectively function to help and to contribute into promoting media sustainability in the countries. So, yes, I prepare a small note on this, but I would not go through all of them to save the time. So I would like to emphasize 3 points that I would like to convey to all of you, responding to the previous experience, Australia and South Africa, on how to deal with these issues. So I'm going to start with providing a better context on how Indonesian committee is being established, what the possibilities actually there and the challenges that we are having. It's been 8 months since we've been established last October, so it's almost 1 year now, and we are still at the stage of some sort of like strengthening the institutional building of the committee and look and try to work around the strategy that we might work or will not work for the committee. So to give a good kind of like understanding on the context, I would like to first introduce that the establishment of the committee is not something ideal. It comes from a very long-standing negotiations between the media and the platform. It took almost 4 years for the piece of regulations that give a foundation for the establishment of the committee to be enacted. So by the time the regulation is actually officially enforced, first, a lot of media were actually lose interest about it already, simply because the changes of the landscape of the media and how the relations, the worsening relations in terms of the dependency of the media ecosystem into the digital platform. So when the presidential regulation was enacted at that time, we don't see a lot of massive support from the media, simply because they've been frustrated already with long-standing kind of like negotiation with the platform. And because of that, a lot of provision within the regulations, I believe it was initially aspired by Australian experience with the Code of Bargaining Act. Then a lot of them were actually being toned down and being smooth, what do you call it? It's being moderated so as not to be very harmful for the digital platform. And it is possible simply because the asymmetric relation is very kind of like obvious. so that they can also put that on the table of negotiations in the policy-making process. That's what I saw. And then when it was enacted last year, this is the context that we are having. We have a totally different environment when it comes to media. A lot of media will actually have a highly depend on the architectures and infrastructure of the digital platform, and it put them not in a good position to have a negotiation at all. So what happened is, and it faced by the committee, what happened is with a very small, some sort of like room to work and to implement what is actually in the provisions, which is already very weak, then we need to find a way on how to build the trust among the media that the committee is actually can be used to again think about and re-strategizing the position when it comes to negotiating with the digital platform. So, but then it's very difficult to convince the media simply because of these situations in the context. I put it there. I will not go through one by one, but that's given impressions that media has been in a very difficult situations. And because of these situations, for example, I noticed that out of the, you said that digital platforms steer actually and shifting the reader behaviors, and it's very obvious in the Indonesian context, as you saw from the third chart, I put it there. Media is not a popular source of informations, right? And then it might relate to the traffic, again relate to the other thing, source of revenue that the media have, and then shifting into the platform. And because of these situations, with very weak authority that the committee have, we don't have the luxury of Australian, for example, which is supported by the Act. We don't actually have some sort of like those piece of regulation that provide and equip committee to have a sanction authority. So can you please go into the last PowerPoint presentations? So the regulation actually set up a lot of good piece of articles, tried to set up the obligation of the digital platform to promote good journalism. But then because of it, some of them were being toned down, and because of the process of the long-standing negotiation between media association and the digital platform, what we are having now is this kind of like challenges. So first of all, some of the small media have a high expectation to the committee so that they can actually also benefit from the opportunity created out by the regulations. But because of this, because of a very weak authority that the committee have, I put it too many carrot, almost none stick. So how could this negotiation took place in the ecosystem, in the situation in which there has been a asymmetric position already? So it seems to me, I might be sounds very pessimistic about the future of the work of the committee, but I just want to put a more sensible, realistic views about challenges that we are having in the committee, how to navigate and how to find a good strategy in addressing the situations. So, and because of many media were at the moment are really highly dependent with the digital platform infrastructure, so they tend to be, okay, we better have things rather than nothing. So this situation is actually not good for the committee. So perhaps, as I said before, we have a lot of work to do, including how to find a good strategy in dealing with these unideal situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Indri. So I'll open the question and answer, but the takeaway I personally think about is like first, there is a unanimous agreement among all three speakers that yes, the tech platforms or digital platforms have to take responsibility of the information ecosystem, including the future of journalism. That's one thing. But the asymmetric, we are in an asymmetrical battle, right? As Mbak Indri already mentioned. And that's why I think, like Paula said, it has to be collective and has to be government and businesses also has to together ask for the responsibility. And like Paula said, and Nelson also mentioned that it has to be without borders or has to be global. So I think, yeah, panels like this in which people who like try to bargain with the big tech platforms has to like globally has to meet regularly, I think, to share experiences. I think this is very important. So thank you, AMSI, AJI, and IFPIM for arranging this panel. So I'll open 1, 2, 3. We will have, I think we have enough time, 30 minutes, more or less, I think. I was like 1, 2 is like there. Sorry, beli komen. The boss, sorry. 1, 2, 3, yeah.
Aku duluan ya?
Yeah.
Ya. Sorry beli komang, I go first.
Oh, Helena, yeah. Hi, Helena.
For this time. Hi, Nelson. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Well, I have 3 questions for 3 different panels. Just go directly to the questions. The first question is...
Helena, could
yeah?
you please introduce your... I know you, but the others don't.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Helena. I work for BBC Media Action. And I have 3 questions for 3 different panelists. The first one to Nelson. Nelson, I know that recently Google just dropped and canceled the compensation to the Australian, the PIPA. So I'm just wondering, what's the reaction and how government backed that up, and what's your current negotiation? I think that's the reasons why you're not here, right? So we're just wondering what is the actions that has been taken to counter that cancel. That's the first one. And the second, from the African case, you've done a kind of studies for that. You know, what's the current update with that? I'm just wondering, that would be kind of lessons for us to take it into account, and what kind of cooperations that you've done between the media, the platforms, if you've done any approach to the platforms, and the negotiations, and how government backed also in that case. And for the Indonesian, Mbak Rini, I think the problem with us is that we have a very low support in that level from the government, if we want to expect that. And also, I think this effort has been done like 4 years, and I'm just wondering to what extent that has been progressed, and how, and any signs of expectations that we can see the compensations might be given for small media in particular. I'm aware there are a couple of media that already received. I don't know if there is any representations here from the media, and if so, maybe they can share also, if they don't sign any NDAs, how they have used that models in advance that media newsroom.
Thank you, Helena. I think Nelson, you can Nelson, and then Paula, and then Mbak Indri. Nelson, please.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. Hi, Helena. Yes, look, I can't disclose much in terms of what we're discussing with Google at the moment this week. But we have been in discussions with Google since as it's publicly known that the contracts with PIPA were terminated, to put politely. But this also follows from last year where Meta cancelled the contracts for all the publishers that it was doing a deal, which was about $70 million. So the impact has been felt already. We've seen newsrooms that have contracted, journalism jobs obviously, have been lost as a result of that. I think now the resulting thing, what we're seeing with PIPA is, what we're saying, this is a warning to the industry that we are. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the terminology, canary in the coal mines. We will be the first one. We're probably the test case, and I think if we go down and there's not much noise made about it, then they see this as the green light to do more to cancel other deals with other medium-sized publishers and other large publishers. So, and I think, look, they've been emboldened by the US election result, which has now put pressure on multiple governments, not just in Australia, but also in Canada, to regulate big tech. We have to walk the fine line with how we treat our trade relationships with the US, because that's now in the balance. I think there's a bit of a trade-off, to be honest. Now we've been traded off for lower tariffs, which is unfair because the media industry employs a lot of, and this goes to, I think, the third speaker about Indonesia and what Helena was talking to. I think there needs to be much more collaboration between all the media players in Indonesia to actually raise the importance of public interest journalism and the role that the media plays in democracy, in fighting fake news, in civil society, in social cohesion. I think if the media doesn't collaborate and come together, and particularly in this AJA, the IFPIM and AMSI conference, we need to keep at this, because the way that the digital platforms adopt the strategy for this, particularly around compensation, is there's no border. As the moderator said, there's no border. They adopt this as a global thing, and if we all start to sort of see this as an individual country jurisdiction, then we will not succeed. We also need to work together, not just within our own countries, but also cross-country with other jurisdictions as well, so we can understand and learn from each other.
Thank you, Nelson. Paula.
I want to just maybe add to what Nelson is saying, in the sense that, so a lot of government departments came out and welcomed the Commission's report. But I think that and this really occurs to me from our discussions, even from yesterday, is that the missing person in the room is the public. We talk about media sustainability, we talk about the value of news, etc., but we don't tell the people who matter, which is our audience. And so very often when we're having these conversations and we're telling the platforms that they should pay, they say, well, the audience don't want you, kind of thing. They're watching TikTok or whatever. And I think, sorry, one of our challenges is actually to do advocacy for media. We do a really poor job of communicating our values to society. And I think one of the advantages of South African Commission is that it's so very clearly positioned within South Africa's, its role towards South Africa's constitution. But there are also other advocacy things that are happening in South Africa at the same time about around the issue of media as a public good, and why government and government departments like Treasury should be treating it as a public good. So I think that that's one of the things that I would encourage, not only that media needs to be able to collectively come together and have these discussions, because that's also what we're finding a challenge, even in South Africa. It's interesting because in apartheid, the media could come to publishers, there was a print and PDMSA would come together and take a stand against the government, but post-apartheid, they seem to be spending more time fighting each other than actually kind of advocating with each other. And so I think one of the things that we need to do is to build a strong collective, is to build our own advocacy of our value to society, and then to advocate for ourselves.
Thank you. That's a strong call to action. Mbak Indri.
Yes, thank you for the questions, and I couldn't agree more about the findings on the low support from the government. But I think we've made some progress, despite all the weaknesses that we understand from the outset when we start our work in October. Then what we can do is try to work around the strategy on how we can first build the trust among the media, especially the small media. So we do a lot of activities to outreach small medias to actually discuss the opportunities that they have with regard to the cooperation and the possibility to cooperate with the digital platform in one side. On the other side, we also outreach digital platform, though it's very hard at the first time, at the beginning. Big platform tend to ignore, but later on it's progressing. There are more cooperative gesture that we can actually see from digital platforms. So we start to get into a more kind of like productive discussion on how to discuss about the indicator of the compliance of the obligation as set out in the Perpres, in the presidential regulations. For example, this I think built a good foundation into the next step that we need to do because by discussing with them the indicator that they agreed upon on how we can actually monitor the obligations, then we need to then we see a good opportunity of the compliance. That's another thing that we are doing in trying to again introduce committees and how we work with to both parties. On the other side, we also work to engage with press council. We did series of lobby so that the press council can actually relax the verifications requirement for small and medium media companies, because at the moment there is a bottleneck in the verification process. And this actually hinders the possibility that small media can benefit from the cooperation scheme with the digital platform. For example, even within AMSI, if they have 300 something members, not all of them were actually being verified by the press council. So it's some of the progress that we could report. I know it's going to be a long way to go, but it give a good hope and anyway for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Indri. Second, yeah.
Hi, I'm Maya. I'm from Brazil. I just wanted to say, as you said, this type of space is extremely important for this specific topic because when we share learnings from the other countries, it really helps the advocacy work we are doing in our specific country. So I was remembering the talk I had with Nelson in 2023 regarding the bargaining codes was extremely important for us to develop our strategies in Brazil. And we went through a learning process in which we started including a bargaining code inside a bill, and then ended up defending because of the Australian experience and the Canadian experience, defending a fund that was based on a tax on big tech. So this learning process is something that really helps us develop new public policy that can help our organizations. And also, I wanted to talk about one other thing and ask you regarding AI. One thing that we've seen in Brazil and talking to other countries is how aggressive the lobbying strategies from the big tech are. And I wanted to hear a bit more also from the panelists on how these strategies have been important in your countries and what are the strategies you have developed in combating these lobbying initiatives. In our country specifically, the Trump tariffs may there is a possibility that they are an opportunity for us to pressure on guaranteeing regulation, because since Brazil has recently been impacted by a tariff because already of the responsabilization of big tech last week, there is a chance, there's an open window for us to continue saying, so let's try and approve regulation now, let's try and approve since the tariff has started. So I also see political opportunity, although very fragile, to try and use this moment to continue advocating for journalism in this process. And we are in an important position to act together as countries. As you said, there have not been, I don't know in Indonesia, but in Brazil also there have not been any signed agreements between AI companies and Brazilian organizations, although I know there are some negotiations going on, and in Indonesia and South Africa too. So seeing also the position the government had yesterday here, I think we are in an important moment in which we need to push for these countries to act together when trying to negotiate with big tech. And maybe in APAC, looking at the previous session, it's also an opportunity for the countries here to try and act together when negotiating with big tech. So specifically on AI, I wanted to know how these processes are happening in these other countries, and I know they are also learning from big tech their lobbying strategies, so it would be good to hear also from you on this specific topic.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take the third question first, because we're sort of like running out of time a little bit. So third question, and then the speakers will respond after this.
Thank you very much. I'm Vinop, actually from Cambodia. I'm from Cambodian Journalists Alliance Association. I'm very appreciated with the sharing from the speaker, and also very insightful. I have heard lots about the, the strategy collective and also the regulation created by, each government. And I also, because the question, I think it, based on how, everyone put the influence into the big tech company. We have learned from the best practice that, the big tech company, they practice or they perform differently to, each country. Especially, when we discuss about the collective, so we also discuss about the small company, the small media company, which is very less power in order to put their influence into the big tech company. And it is applied the same for the country where the small population and the small market for those big tech company, which is looking for like solidarity or support, or how to connect it with other regional country or partner, for example in ASEAN. So when we discuss about collective, whether we discuss about the collective in each country, or whether the strategy would be built across the region in order to build a big power, and also to put influence into our bargainings with the big tech company. So I would like to hear not just theory or the idea, but also looking for the real practice as well after the forum. Thank you.
Thank you. So each speaker will have like about a minute to respond. I think one is strategy about AI, and then second is like how about a regional, more regional cooperation in dealing with the big tech. From Nelson, and then Paula, and then Indri again. Nelson, please.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, look, in terms of Maya, thank you for your question. In terms of the AI, yes, it's, there's no deals done in Australia. The only deals that we're aware of is that the News Corporation, Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation, has done a global deal, but that is not Australia. That's a global deal that they've done. And to be honest, they've left us all behind in Australia. They don't really care whether the rest of us get a deal or not. So it's not in the spirit of collaboration, unfortunately. And yes, AI companies are learning from the big tech on how to lobby against any regulation. And we're facing that in Australia. You know, every AI company that we've tried to talk to said we're not doing any deals. We think that this information should be for free. But let's face it, at the end of the day, their generative AI machines cannot get accurate information without information from us. Okay, so if we need to, I think, collaboratively say, okay, stop, you cannot scrape our websites anymore, and we'll see how accurate their information is and how their consumers and customers find their information when it's no longer accurate. So yeah, and to the question about the ASEAN and how we collaborate, I think this is an important conferences like this. It comes to the discussion about borders. We need to approach this regulating big tech without borders, to be honest, and collaborating with South Africa, in the global South, in Brazil, in Cambodia, across ASEAN, whether it's led by Indonesia first, and hopefully Indonesia can lead the way on this, is that we cannot rest. And the next 3 years will be tough because of the new administration in the US, but we cannot let the progress that we've made in the past 3 years go away and walk back 10 steps backwards just because of the threat of tariffs. We need to, stay strong in this and collaborate.
Thank you, Nelson. Paula, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think that governments must play a convening and regulatory role to ensure transparency, for example, to enforce fair conduct, and to really protect smaller players. But a competition commission can only make findings for its own country. And so I will speak to any media entity across the African continent to tell them what we've been doing, because if they can advocate for their own country to do something similar, or even not to go through the process, but to implement some of our findings, then I will do so. Because I think that it makes sense that if there is a national collective movement, that a regional collective movement will be more powerful. The reality is that the platforms create products for the American market and then roll it out to the rest of us and don't necessarily see us as critical. And we have to show that our collective presence is critical for them if they're going to take us seriously. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. I think AI was not on the table when we discussed about the presidential regulations and the negotiation between media and the platform, but it is now, and we need to do something about it, as well as the finding and the observation that the committee, my friend Mas Damar is especially look into it, that we can't move forward without also tackle out about the issues of competitions and strengthening the competition committee in the countries. So that's one pillar that actually missed out from all the designs of these regulations to tackle the issues of asymmetric power between media and the platform. So that's two homework that I think I call for everyone around the table, especially those from Indonesia, to also look about it and work together with the committee to promote that. And in regard to the collective, I strongly believe about this, simply because we've learned that despite all the weaknesses, we need to move forward and to contribute something into the media ecosystem to help them sustainable in the futures. And one way in doing that is try to look for, a collaborations beyond the countries. And yesterday in the high-level meeting with the Vice Minister, there's a proposal on doing a global South-to-South forum hosted by Indonesia. So I call for everyone, because I see that as one of the opportunity to, as you said, to show to the digital platform and tech companies that you cannot ignore one country. You can ignore one country, but you cannot ignore all of them if they go together against you. So that's the strong message that I think is possible to do in that forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, and for the speakers for this very inspiring panel.